Galileo, the man who moved the earth. What if one person, just one person with a bit of curiosity, could completely change how we see our place in the universe? Well, today we're talking about the man who did just that. He challenged everything.
I mean, seriously, just imagine for a second. What if everything you've ever been taught about the universe was just wrong? The really basic stuff, the stuff that seems so obvious, like the ground under your feet being totally still. Well, that's the kind of shakeup Galileo started. It's the huge question he dared to ask more than 400 years ago.
So, to really get why Galileo was such a big deal, we've got to rewind a bit. We need to look at the world he was born into. And let me tell you, it was a world where you were told what the truth was. You didn't go out and find it for yourself.
All right, so the year is 1564. Galileo was born in Italy, and it's like he showed up at the perfect time. This was the very beginning of what we now call the scientific revolution. You could feel it in the air, this buzz. People were starting to wake up and say, hey, maybe these old ideas aren't the whole story. They started to question things, to look for how the world really works.
And this created a massive clash of ideas, a real showdown between two ways of thinking. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the old way was simple. Truth came from authority. If an ancient genius like Aristotle said it, or if the church taught it, that was that. End of story. But Galileo? He came along with this totally wild idea. He said, nope, truth isn't something you just accept. It's something you have to find for yourself, with experiments, with measurements, with proof.
Okay, let's take a perfect example. For almost 2,000 years, everyone just knew that heavier things fall faster than lighter things. I mean, Aristotle said so. And it kind of makes sense, right? If you drop a bowling ball and a feather, you know which one's hitting the ground first. It feels like common sense.
But here's the thing about Galileo. He didn't care about what felt right. He wanted to know for sure, so he did experiments. He famously rolled balls down these smooth, inclined planes, which helped get rid of the tricky effects of air resistance. And what he found was incredible. His measurements showed that everything, speeds up at the exact same rate no matter how heavy it is. Just like that, with a simple experiment, he proved that centuries of common sense could be completely wrong.
And this obsession with actually looking at things, with observing, led him to his greatest weapon. It was a tool, an invention that was about to do more than just challenge old ideas. It was going to blow the old view of the universe to smithereens.
Okay, picture this. It's 1609. Galileo gets wind of this new invention, a sort of spyglass that makes things far away look closer. Now, most people were using it to spot ships at sea. But Galileo? He gets one, and he doesn't just use it, he makes it way better, much more powerful. And then he does something that changes history. He points it up, at the sky.
And what he saw? Wow, it was a total shock. The moon, right? For centuries, everyone believed it was this perfect, smooth, celestial ball. But through his telescope, Galileo saw it was a mess. It was covered in mountains and craters and valleys. It looked a lot like Earth. So much for the perfect heaven.
So next, he swings his telescope over to Jupiter, and he sees these 4 tiny little stars dancing around it night after night. They weren't stars. They were moons orbiting Jupiter. Now, this was a huge problem for the old theory. If those moons were going around Jupiter, then it meant that not everything in the universe was going around the Earth. It was a major crack in the foundation of everything they thought they knew.
But the real nail in the coffin? That was Venus. He watched it, and he saw it had phases, just like our own moon does, crescent, half, full. And there was simply no way, mathematically no way, that could happen if Venus was orbiting the Earth. The only way it worked is if Venus, and by extension, the Earth, were orbiting the Sun. He had it. Cold, hard, visual proof.
So now Galileo has this mountain of evidence. And you can just see it coming, right? A massive collision course was set. On one side, you have Galileo's universe, the one you can see with your own eyes. And on the other, the universe of tradition, the one that had been accepted for thousands of years.
This led Galileo to become a huge supporter of the heliocentric model. Now, this wasn't totally his idea. A guy named Copernicus had proposed it decades before. The idea was simple, really. The sun is at the center, and the planets, including Earth, go around it. But for Copernicus, it was mostly a mathematical theory, a better way to do the calculations. Galileo's telescope, that's what made it real, something you could actually see.
And this is where the two sides really stood. You had the incredibly powerful Catholic Church, teaching that Earth was the fixed,
unmoving center of everything, the special stage for God's creation. And then you had Galileo with his telescope saying, actually, it looks like we're just another planet, and we're definitely moving.
Yeah, this was never going to be just a friendly debate among scholars. This was a direct challenge to the ultimate authority. And that authority was about to push back, hard.
And in 1633, it finally happened. Galileo, an old man by now, is hauled off to Rome to stand trial. And not just any trial, a trial before the Inquisition. The charge wasn't that he made a scientific mistake. The charge was heresy. It was a crime against the Church, against God himself.
The result was just heartbreaking. Under the threat of torture, Galileo was forced to get on his knees and publicly deny everything, to say his life's work was wrong and that the earth does not move. As punishment, he was sentenced to house arrest for the rest of his life.
But, and this is the incredible part of the story, you can't put an idea under house arrest. You can silence the man, sure, but his books, his discoveries, his entire method of thinking, it was already out there. It had spread like wildfire across Europe. You just can't lock up the truth.
So, even though Galileo the man lost his battle, the war for knowledge, he absolutely won that. And that brings us to his legacy, which is just immense.
See, Galileo's real gift wasn't just a bunch of cool discoveries. He gave us a whole new way to discover things. It boils down to these 3 pillars. 1, don't just think, experiment. 2, use math to describe what you see. And 3, challenge what you're told with actual evidence. Sound familiar? It should. That's basically the scientific method.
And that's really the key takeaway here. His biggest contribution wasn't just showing that the Earth moves, it was showing us how to figure things out for ourselves. He gave us a reliable toolkit for finding the truth. He taught us how to ask nature a question, and more importantly, how to understand the answer.
And his legacy isn't just something in a history book. It's alive and well, right now, in all of us. I mean, think about it. Anytime you do an experiment, or collect some data to prove a point, or even just ask someone, hey, where's the evidence for that? You're basically following in Galileo's footsteps.
So that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Galileo challenged the most basic, obvious truth of his day. So what about our time? What's the obvious truth that we all believe today that's just waiting? Waiting for the next Galileo to come along and prove it wrong.